the Galactic Council delivers the ultimatum. The Galactic Council, tired of the Terran Empire's rapid expansion and growing influence, decided to take action. A formal ultimatum was sent to Earth, outlining a set of demands that would severely limit the Terran Empire's autonomy. The Council expected humanity to back down, assuming that the young, comparatively smaller empire would see reason in the face of such overwhelming galactic power. The ultimatum was delivered with an air of authority, reinforced by the vast fleets of the Council's military, which included ships from several of the most advanced species in the galaxy. The message was clear: halt your expansion, disarm your forces, and submit to Council authority or be destroyed. Across the galaxy, the news of the ultimatum spread like wildfire. The media on hundreds of worlds speculated on what the humans would do, many believing that the Terran Empire would have no choice but to comply. After all, no empire in history had successfully defied the might of the Galactic Council. Yet, behind closed doors, there was growing anxiety. Some council members privately questioned whether issuing such a bold threat was wise. They feared that the humans, known for their unpredictability and resilience, might not react as expected. These fears, however, were dismissed as paranoia by the Council's leadership, confident that their overwhelming military superiority would force the Terrans to submit. But the Terran Empire received the ultimatum with a mixture of anger and defiance. In the halls of the Imperial Senate, the message was met with outrage, sparking a fierce debate about how to respond. While some argued for diplomacy, others pushed for immediate retaliation. Emperor Marcus Vane, a strategic genius known for his ability to anticipate his enemies' moves, convened his war council. He knew that the council believed they held all the cards, but the Terrans had been preparing for this moment for years. They had studied the weaknesses of their potential adversaries and had developed weapons and technologies that even the council didn't know existed. This was the moment the Empire had anticipated a chance to prove that humanity was no longer a race to be underestimated. The Terran Empire's calculated defiance. In the days following the Galactic Council's ultimatum, the Terran Empire did not issue an immediate response, leading to rising tension across the galaxy. Political pundits and alien diplomats speculated whether the silence from Earth indicated a hesitant acceptance or a desperate scramble to avoid confrontation. But behind the scenes, the Terrans were far from scrambling. Emperor Marcus Vane and his advisors were carefully plotting their next move. They understood that the Council had given them an ultimatum from a position of assumed superiority, but they had grossly underestimated the Terran resolve and preparedness. The Terran Empire, though younger than many of the galactic civilizations, had spent decades advancing their technology in secret. Unbeknownst to the Council, humanity had been developing cutting-edge military innovations, cloaked warships, faster-than-light-strike fleets, and weapon systems far beyond what the Council believed possible. They had also cultivated covert alliances with marginalized or disenfranchised species, those who had suffered under the heavy hand of the Council's governance. These species, though small in number, saw humanity as a potential ally against the Council's oppressive rule. While the Council believed that the Terrans stood alone, the Empire had quietly woven a network of support across the galaxy. Emperor Vane saw an opportunity in the Council's arrogance. Instead of issuing a public response, the Terran Empire began mobilizing its forces discreetly, placing its fleet in key strategic positions across neutral sectors, ready to defend against any surprise attack. Simultaneously, Terran diplomats worked tirelessly behind the scenes, solidifying alliances with those species who harbored resentment toward the Council. These moves were all part of a calculated defiance, not designed for a direct confrontation, but to weaken the Council's political and military infrastructure from within. The world waited, watching, as the Terran Empire's silence stretched on. Tension mounted as the Council grew more impatient, readying their fleets for what they believed would be an inevitable show of force. However, humanity had no intention of waiting passively for the Council's hand to strike first. They were preparing something far more strategic, biding their time until the perfect moment to unleash their response. one that would send shockwaves across the galaxy. The Terran Empire strikes with precision. The Galactic Council's patience began to wear thin. Intergalactic news outlets buzzed with speculation as the countdown to the Council's deadline loomed ever closer. In response to humanity's silence, Council warships were positioned along the borders of Terran space, a looming threat intended to remind the Empire of their inferior position. However, just as the Council prepared to send a final warning, the Terran Empire acted in a way no one expected, striking first, and with surgical precision. Instead of engaging in an all-out war, the Terrans executed a series of calculated, highly strategic strikes, targeting key infrastructure and supply lines that supported the Council's military. In a matter of hours, cloaked Terran warships infiltrated deep into Council-controlled space, dismantling their communication networks, sabotaging power grids, and crippling their hyperspace routes. Advanced Terran stealth technology allowed them to slip past the Council's defenses undetected, catching even the most seasoned Council military commanders by surprise. At the same time, hidden Terran sleeper agents embedded within key Council territories activated, sowing discord and confusion from within. Massive sabotage efforts paralyzed several Council worlds, with spaceports shut down, industrial centers sabotaged, and crucial resources diverted or destroyed. While the Council's military was large, its sheer size made it slow and cumbersome to respond. The Terran forces, by contrast, were agile and adaptive, striking and disappearing before the Council could even mobilize its full forces. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels flared with unexpected developments. Several species who had long harbored secret resentment toward the Council began to defect, emboldened by humanity's audacity and skill. The alliances the Terran Empire had nurtured in the shadows suddenly came to the forefront as smaller factions across the galaxy declared their support for Earth, pledging to stand against the Council's dominance. The Council, once thought to be untouchable, found itself caught off guard by the sheer efficiency and intelligence of the Terran counteroffensive. Instead of being cowed by the Council's ultimatum, humanity had turned the tables, showing the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The Council's massive fleets, positioned along Terran borders, were now effectively cut off from supply lines and communications, rendering them vulnerable to further attacks. The Terran Empire had shown, in a matter of days, that the Council's size and power meant nothing when faced with superior strategy, technology, and the unwavering resolve of humanity. The Galactic Council's fragmentation and humanity's rising influence. As the effects of the Terran Empire's precision strikes rippled through the galaxy, the Galactic Council was plunged into chaos. The once unified coalition of species, which had ruled the galaxy with absolute authority for centuries, began to fracture under the pressure. Council worlds that were far from the front lines started to doubt the leadership's ability to phylacteck them, and internal power struggles erupted within the Council itself. The smaller member species, long coerced into compliance by the Council's military might, began to question whether they should continue their allegiance to a crumbling authority. The sight of their fleets cut off and their infrastructure crippled sent shockwaves through these civilizations as their faith in the Council's invincibility was shattered. Humanity's strategic brilliance had exposed not just weaknesses in the Council's military infrastructure, but also deep political cracks within its leadership. The Terran Empire capitalized on this disarray, launching an aggressive diplomatic campaign. Terran emissaries, long underestimated by the galaxy's older civilizations, began negotiations with former Council-aligned worlds, offering them economic cooperation, technological advancements, and mutual defense pacts. Many species, seeing the Terrans as a new rising power that could challenge the Council's oppressive dominance, began to switch sides, further undermining the Council's authority. Meanwhile, the Council's military command was in disarray, struggling to regroup and respond to the Terran tactics. Council forces were spread too thin, their resources drained by humanity's relentless attacks on their logistical systems. Frustration boiled over in the Council chambers as their leaders argued over the best course of action. Some factions advocated for a full-scale invasion of Terran space, but others feared that doing so would lead to a prolonged, costly war they could no longer afford. Internal dissent grew, and it became increasingly clear that the Council's unity was beginning to unravel. Back on Earth, Emperor Marcus Vane and his advisors watched as the galaxy's balance of power shifted in their favor. The Terran Empire, once thought to be an upstart civilization with no real influence, now commanded the respect and fear of species throughout the galaxy. Humanity had proven not only their resilience but also their capacity for strategic warfare and diplomacy. The galaxy was no longer ruled by the Galactic Council alone. Humanity had risen to become a formidable force, reshaping the interstellar order with cunning, precision, and unyielding resolve. The cracks in the Council's foundation were deepening, and as the galaxy's inhabitants began to see the potential for a new era of power dynamics, the Terran Empire stood at the forefront, ready to seize its place in the stars. Conclusion of the story. The Galactic Council, once the unchallenged authority in the galaxy, now found itself teetering on the edge of collapse. The Terran Empire's calculated defiance and strategic brilliance had not only exposed the Council's vulnerabilities but also shattered the illusion of their invincibility. What began as an ultimatum to subdue humanity had spiraled into a full-scale crisis, with the Council's fleet scattered, their infrastructure crippled, and their political unity fractured. As humanity's influence spread, more species once cowed by the Council's power began to defect, aligning themselves with the Terran Empire. The Empire's deft use of diplomacy, technological superiority, and unwavering resilience turned them from an underestimated threat into a rising galactic superpower. Their actions had changed the trajectory of the galaxy itself, showing that no empire, no matter how vast, was beyond being challenged. The Galactic Council, reeling from the fallout of their failed ultimatum, struggled to hold on to the remnants of their authority, but their grip was slipping. The galaxy was entering a new era, one in which humanity against all odds stood at the forefront. The balance of power had shifted, and the stars would never be the same again. Humanity had shown not only their military prowess but their capacity to inspire change, altering the very fabric of galactic politics and ensuring that the legacy of the Terran Empire would echo across the cosmos for generations to come.